I never imagined how a humiliating piano lesson could lead to a life-changing performance. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My hands trembled as I walked into Mrs. Collins' dimly lit studio. The air was thick with the smell of old wood and dusty sheet music. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, a relentless drumbeat of anxiety and dread. I was 11. I felt so small in that room, surrounded by towering pianos and the distant echoes of practice notes. My mother had promised me this lesson would be magical, a chance to discover my hidden talent. Instead, it felt like stepping into a lion's den. My palms were sweaty, and I could feel the eyes of the other students drilling into me. Their whispers felt like icy daggers. Mrs. Collins, with her sharp glasses and a voice like shattering glass, clapped her hands. "Let's see what you've got." The room fell deathly silent. My heart raced so fast I thought it might explode. I willed myself to remember the notes, but the music evaporated from my mind. I glanced at the keys. They glistened under the barely there light, mocking me. I sat down, fumbling to place my fingers on middle C. But when I began to play the simplest melody, I hit the wrong note. Pitying snickers filled the room. My face burned hotter than a fire. I wanted to disappear, to hide beneath the grand piano and never come out. Tears stung my eyes as Mrs. Collins leaned in, her expression a mix of disappointment and frustration. "Try again. And make it count." I took a deep breath. But in that moment of desperation, something strange happened. A haunting refrain filled my hiata tune, so compelling and beautiful, it made my heart ache. Without realizing it, I began to play. The wrong notes faded as I poured my soul into the keys. My fingers danced over the piano. It felt like I was channeling something mystical. Suddenly, the snickers turned to silence. I could feel their eyes shift, curiosity replacing scorn. I lost myself in the music, each note intoxicating. But just as quickly, it was gone. I stopped, panting, and stared at Mrs. Collins. Had it all been an illusion? "Where did that come from?" she asked, her voice low and serious. I felt a surge of confusion and fear. What had I tapped into? What was this hidden part of me that could create such beauty, yet had been buried so deep? There was something unsettling in her gaze. Something knowing. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The beginning of something extraordinary, yet terrifying. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. It was a week after the lesson that I could still feel the weight of Mrs. Collins' stare on me. Each day felt like walking a tightrope, suspended between the fear of failure and the flicker of hope ignited in that quiet room. I returned home from school, my backpack dragging against my shoulders like a burden I couldn't shake. My mother was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with an intent focus that seemed to dance on the edge of joy and anxiety. She looked up as I shuffled in. "How was your lesson?" Her inquiry was innocent, yet my heart sank. How could I explain the mix of exhilaration and shame that churned in my chest? "It was fine," I mumbled, avoiding her gaze as I poured myself a glass of water. I could feel her disappointment settle like dust in the air between us. She'd believed in me. How could I let her down again? That night, the haunting melody played in my mind like an echo refusing to fade. I lay in bed, enveloped in darkness, the weight of unknowing pressing against my chest. Just as I was about to drift into an uneasy sleep, I heard my mother humming. It was soft, a gentle lull that wrapped around me like a warm embrace. I dared to slip from my room, drawn to her voice, yearning for comfort. She sat at the edge of the living room sofa, the dim light illuminating her face. I hesitated in the doorway, watching her sway gently, lost in her world. I recalled the way she used to play the piano before life's burdens had dimmed her spark, beautiful improvisations that filled our home with warmth. Quietly, I stepped forward, uncertain yet beckoned by the potential magic of shared vulnerability. Mom? I called softly. She turned, her face brightening, and patted the space beside her. Come sit.as. I joined her. The silence between us felt thick with unsaid words. You used to play so beautifully. Why don't you anymore? Her expression shifted, shadows creeping across her features. Life has a way of making us forget things we love, she said, a hint of sadness lacing her words. I could sense the weight she carried, the sacrifices she made that went unseen, like hidden notes in a song longing to be played. Can you teach me? I blurted, an idea unfolding in my mind. About music. About everything. Her eyes widened, surprise mixed with a flicker of hope. Of course, love. But music is more than just notes. It's how you feel, how you express everything inside you. As she guided me through the basics, letting me piece together the emotions lurking in the recesses of my heart, I felt a breakthrough. Her small gestures of kindness ignited embers of hope again. Each note we played together tapped into a vein of connection that had dulled over the years. The tension wrapped around us began to dissipate under the shared rhythm of our creation. Yet, as the days turned into weeks and our makeshift lessons continued, Mrs. Collins called me in for another lesson. Although my fingers trembled with hesitation, I approached the piano with a new determination. I had learned to feel, to connect the music with my emotions. But there was still an undercurrent of fear. What if I erred again? What if I laid bare my soul and it was met with rejection? Let's see what you've got this time, Mrs. Collins urged again, her eyes glinting in the low light. The air felt electric, as if the room was holding its breath. I began, tapping the keys with a mixture of hesitation and resolve. Then, something unexpected happened. My fingers slipped into the melody that had surfaced that day like a fleeting whisper of something I couldn't quite grasp. I played, pouring out the fear, the hope, the longing all wrapped into a frantic crescendo. As I lost myself in the music, Mrs. Collins leaned closer, and for a moment, I thought I saw something shift in her expression. What was it? It was almost recognition, but just as I reached a place where clarity seeped through the chaos, the sound of shattering glass echoed behind me. I turned to see a vase toppled off a shelf, shards scattered across the floor. The beauty of my moment splintered in an instant. Mrs. Collins' face transformed, her resolve seemed to fracture as well, and in her eyes, I sensed a rush of emotion that bewildered me. Then she stood up, trembling slightly, her voice falling to a whisper. I need to tell you something. A chilling wave took hold of my heart. What was she about to reveal? The room felt heavy, and the air thickened with a sudden weight of uncertainty. My fingers froze above the keys, bracing for what might come next. The silence stretched between us like a taut string, vibrating with unspoken words. My breath hitched as I watched Mrs. Collins grapple with her emotions, a storm brewing behind her composed exterior. The shards of glass glinted ominously on the floor, much like the fracture in the charged atmosphere that enveloped us. I didn't want to say anything, but she hesitated, her gaze dropping momentarily to the floor before returning to meet mine. I've been struggling too. With my own music, my own fears, hope, and concern tangled within me. I had only ever seen her as a steadfast mentor, a figure exuding confidence and authority. Hearing her confess vulnerability felt akin to being offered a glimpse behind a curtain, and at once, I felt less alone in my own struggles. You? I allowed the word to falter into the air. Yes. I lost someone close to me years ago, and it shattered my world. The music disappeared for a while. I thought if I forgot about it, it would fade, but she swallowed hard, a tremor lining her voice. It never truly left me. Just like the feelings you're wrestling with, it lurked, waiting for the right moment to resurface. The knot in my throat tightened, resonating with her pain. But how do you pick it all up again? How do you let it back into your life without fear? I tasted the bittersweet anticipation of her wisdom just beyond reach. You take it one note at a time, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I could feel the weight of her stories radiating between us, an invisible thread tethering our shared hurt. You face the fear of vulnerability, and you allow yourself to be moved by the music, by the memory of what you've lost. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding against my ribs, each surge echoing the intensity of our conversation. Mrs. Collins stood there, laid bare and true, and for the first time, I saw someone who had endured their own struggles, someone who might just understand the chaotic symphony of thoughts swirling in my mind. Suddenly, the sound of the door creaked open, pulling us from our moment. The familiar figure of my mother entered, her expression lighting up as she took in the sight of us together. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," she started softly, her eyes widening at the shards scattered across the floor. "What happened?" Upon seeing my mother, Mrs. Collins straightened, a mask of professionalism slipping back over her features. "Just a little accident," she replied, her voice regaining its steadiness. "Nothing to worry about." I didn't want to let go of the connection we were forging, the understanding tinging the space with hope. Mrs. Collins was just sharing her story about music, I managed, feeling the urgency as it slipped away. "Oh, music." My mother's smile faltered for a moment, the shadow of something unsaid flickering behind her eyes. "I always thought there was magic in the way you expressed yourself with it." "Magic, yes," Mrs. Collins echoed, her voice dipping slightly. "But there was an undercurrent to it, a reminder of the struggle that seemed to silently swell behind the words." Before I could press further, my mother caught my gaze, her eyes brimming with expectations, yet unwilling to lay bare her own fears. "Maybe you could come to our house for dinner, Mrs. Collins? It would be lovely to share a meal and just like old times." Mrs. Collins replied, a knot of grief tightening her smile. "Yes, just like old times," my mother echoed, though I could hear the hesitation threading through her enthusiasm. As our hearts swelled with unwritten promises of connection, a strange weight washed over me. Something about the mention of old times felt like an anchor, tethering us to an era when music filled our lives with joy rather than tension. And before I could voice my concerns, my phone buzzed audibly, breaking the fragile moment. I fished it out, heart-dropping as I saw the text message flash across the screen. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but the message was stark: "We need to talk." "You can't hide from your past forever." Ice washed over me, a chilling reminder of shadows that I thought I had left behind. Suddenly, the sense of warmth from our shared moments slipped away, swallowed beneath a newfound weight of fear and uncertainty. My hands shook as I lowered the phone, looking towards Mrs. Collins and my mother, both of their faces reflecting a worry that mirrored my own thoughts. The tightrope I had been walking suddenly felt frail and fraying beneath my feet. "Is everything all right?" My mother's voice broke through my haze, but how could I explain this fresh wound? How could I voice the turbulence crashing within me when I was still grappling with the sheer resolve of new connections? I shook my head, trapping the words in my throat. Mrs. Collins took a cautious step closer, her eyes searching mine. "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." But for now, I felt adrift on turbulent waters, drowning beneath the weight of silence and the looming shadows of yesterday. The music that once offered hope now felt distant, obscured by fears I was yet unwilling to confront, and as I looked at the two women standing before me, I wasn't sure if I could muster the strength to unveil the storm brewing just beneath my surface. I was no longer on solid ground. Instead, an emotional cliff hung over me, promising a fall that felt inevitable. The evening wore on, the strain of the past biting at my heels like a relentless shadow. As my mother busied herself with preparations to call for dinner, a thin veil of unease hung in the air, thickening with every moment that passed without resolution. I moved mechanically, my mind trapped in a spiral of thoughts that converged on that ominous text. "You can't hide from your past forever." The words echoed, gnawing at my resolve. I shifted my gaze back to Mrs. Collins, her expression thoughtful yet heavy, as if she too sensed the weight pressing down on us. "Maybe moving forward means confronting those shadows," she suggested gently, yet a hint of worry shadowed her eyes. I nodded absently, the ache of uncertainty blossoming in my chest. The warmth of connection we had just forged felt brittle, a mere illusion in the face of the reckoning I feared awaited me. "It's just sometimes it feels like a tidal wave," I murmured, unsure which part of my soul I was sharing. "Sometimes tidal waves are just storms brewing beneath," she replied, a flicker of understanding lighting her features. "They're part of our journey. You're not meant to weather them alone," but how could I make her understand just how deep my currents ran? How could I unravel the truth which had been buried beneath layers of shame and silence? The struggle, the fear, the moments intertwined with who I used to bite all felt like a symphony in discord. "Mrs. Collins," I began, my voice trembling ever so slightly. "If I dared to confront my past, then what happens after?" Before she could respond, a voice cut through the muted silence, the voice of my mother calling from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready, everyone." There was an upbeat tone to her voice that felt forced, a gentle reminder that life continued to push forward even when the heart was poised on the edge of a precipice. As we settled at the dining table, the aroma of homemade pasta filled the air. Yet each bite felt devoid of flavor, my heart churning in tandem with my thoughts. I half listened to my mother's animated discussion about work, nodding along, but I could see the tension etching deeper lines into Mrs. Collins' face. I caught her glancing sidelong at me, her eyes glistening with unspoken questions. "Are you still working on that composition?" my mother asked. I barely had the energy to respond, my mind awash with everything unsaid. Instead, a momentary silence enveloped us, the two women hungrily waiting for an answer that seemed to tumble somewhere down the precipice I was teetering on. My nod was half-hearted. "Trying to," I muttered, but my voice barely penetrated the still air. Just as I felt the weight of expectations crescendoing within me, Mrs. Collins leaned in. "You know, sometimes sharing our fears can release the pressure. We all carry a beautiful vulnerability inside us," she said softly, a gentle reminder wrapped in courage. Startled by her honesty, I caught her gaze, searching for comfort, for connection. It dawned on me that she, too, was a vessel marred by loss and pain, still seeking solace in melodies that sometimes felt just out of reach. A sudden ringing interrupted the depth of our conversation. My phone buzzed again, this time more aggressively. I glanced at the screen, my breath hitching. A second message from the same unfamiliar number. "You can't ignore this forever. Meet me at the park tomorrow at 3 p.m. My heart thundered as I processed the imminent urgency of their words. The nausea washed over me, cold and unyielding. My mother was now fretting over my unusual silence, her brow knit with concern. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I forced a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Just a lot on my mind." Another tense moment hung in the air. I could see the questions swirling behind my mother's eyes, the need for reassurance clashing with her fear of the unknown. "I'm here for you," Mrs. Collins said, and that single statement reverberated through me like a low piano note, resonating with truth. But the undertow was dragging me deeper, and my heart raced, pounded with the uncertainty of what awaited me. How could I explain? That confronting my past felt like stepping into a cage of wild beasts. Each pulse in my veins beckoned me toward a path I was too terrified to walk. As my mother began asking about my upcoming performance, I felt the warmth of the room dissipate, growing distant. The darkness around the edges of my thoughts strained at the seams, ready to unravel at the first invocation of my past. I resisted the urge to flee, but as I looked up, locked in a moment of understanding with Mrs. Collins, the weight of what lay beyond our polite supper, the unspoken burden we were both carrying, seemed to hang in the air. Thick with entangling threads of music and fear. A soundless tremor shot through me as the realization hit. I was stumbling toward the edge of a precipice, the horizon closing in, and there stood the choice. Confront the past with all its jagged edges, or let it swallow me whole. As I raised my glass for a toast, the words felt hollow, my heart drummed a sense of impending peril. What clarity lay ahead, and could I summon the courage to face the darkness? With the risk of losing everything looming larger than life, that singular question echoed, trembling against the unforgiving cocoon of silence, and even as my mother smiled with the radiance of hope, the shadows crept closer, ready to discover if I would brave the storm or let it engulf me completely. The next morning, the sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains with an insistent brightness that felt almost mocking. After a restless night spent twisting under the weight of the text that had rattled me to my core, I could barely form coherent thoughts, let alone actually consider facing what awaited me in the park that afternoon. With each passing hour, uncertainty gnawed at me, mixing with a sense of dread that tightened around my chest. As I sat up, glancing around my room, I was struck by the silence. Everything felt muted, devoid of the typical morning chatter of my mother bustling about. I stood up and crossed to the window, watching as the world outside spun on, blissfully unaware of the battle raging within me. Children biked down the street, the laughter of their carefree spirits drifting through the air like a balmy reminder of innocence lost. The small clock on my nightstand ticked away in relentless seconds, counting down to the inevitable meeting at the park, and I knew the moment would arrive soon enough. With a heavy heart, I stumbled towards the bathroom, splashing water on my face, hoping to wash away the anxiety that clung to me like a second skin. Each droplet felt like a judgment, a reminder of the choices I had yet to make. Despite my inner turmoil, I felt a flicker of determination rise deep within me. Perhaps Mrs. Collins was right. Perhaps confronting my past could also mean embracing aspects of myself that had long been stifled. I had spent years producing music, hiding fragments of my truth inside melodies that lived only in secret. What if I could use the same music to guide me through this reckoning? After a hasty breakfast, I grabbed my notebook and resolve, heading to the park earlier than intended. The sway of the trees greeted me like old friends as I walked, their leaves dancing in a gentle breeze admonishing my spirit, urging me forward. With every step, I felt the emotional currents pulling me deeper into a state of reflection, as conflicting feelings of fear and anticipation wrestled within me. Once at the park, I found a secluded bench, the dappled light providing a patch of warmth amidst the cool morning air. I pulled out my notebook and began to write, pouring my heart into the pages in hopes of clarifying the storm inside me. Notes of uncertainty collided with fleeting memories of victories and failures alike, tangled together like the notes of a forgotten song, begging to be assigned meaning. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up to see Mrs. Collins, her kind smile a hesitant welcome in the midst of my tumultuous thoughts. I gestured for her to sit, and as she settled beside me, I realized I didn't want to face whatever was looming alone. "How are you feeling?" She spoke, her tone soft yet probing. "I'm terrified," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Good," she replied, her expression unwavering. "That means you're about to do something truly brave." As we sat in the silence that followed, I could see her searching for the right words. In those moments, something flickered between us, not judgment or pity, but a steadfast connection grounded against the speculation of the past. Her presence, a soothing balm to my turmoil. "Tell me," she urged gently. "What happens when you confront those shadows?" My breath hitched as I considered my response. What if I'm not strong enough? The weight of honesty felt lighter yet hung in the air like a pendulum, swinging between fear and vulnerability. Mrs. Collins placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, offering me the strength to speak my truth. "Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's the courage to face it," she said, her voice warm like sunlight streaming through the trees. We grew quiet then, the soundtrack of the park a gentle reminder of the beauty woven into life's uncertainties. Laughter echoed from a nearby playground, a little girl attempting to reach for the swing as her father stood beside her, encouraging. Watching the scene, I realized how intertwined our stories truly were, like threads in an intricate tapestry. Each one, whether woven from pain or joy, contributed to the whole and gave it depth and color. "Well," I breathed, drawing courage from her presence. "If I'm going to step into the storm, I might as well do it with music me own." Her eyes lit up with recognition. "A beautiful way to face it. Perhaps it's time to share that hidden part of yourself with the world." I nodded, a fire of determination igniting within me. Just then, my phone buzzed again, shattering the fragile atmosphere. The familiar number blinked back, this time seizing my attention in a grip of urgency. "I'm here. At the fountain." Now, panic surged in my veins as I glanced at Mrs. Collins, who studied my face, her own expression morphing into concern. "You don't have to go," but the choice felt no longer mine. It was a pull, a magnetic force compelling me to move, to confront. I stood abruptly, heart racing, every inch of me vibrating with unyielding tension. "I have to," I murmured, driven by an impulse I couldn't articulate. "What if it's a trap?" She interjected, her worry palpable. "What if they're not what you hope for?" I shook my head resolutely. "I need to know once and for all." And just like that, A new layer of urgency enveloped me as I turned to leave. Each step toward the fountain echoed my heartbeat, a reminder of the escalating climax awaiting me. What would I discover there? The unknown felt like an open wound, raw and vulnerable, and at that moment, amidst the beauty of the park, I knew I was about to confront not only a person, but the very core of my fears. The fountain came into view, its water swaying gracefully in the morning sun, but as I glanced around, dread rushed over me in a wave. No one was there. The air thickened with an unnerving absence, and with a sinking heart, I wondered if perhaps I had walked into an unexpected snare, a haunting reminder that truths may lie waiting, just out of reach, ready to reveal a hidden past I wasn't prepared to face. As I stood before the empty fountain, confusion mixed with an unease that settled heavily in my stomach. The sounds of laughter and joy from the park felt like a distant echo, and the sun, once a source of warmth, now bore down on me with a harsh, scrutinizing glare. My heart raced, each beat a reminder of my solitude in this moment of confrontation. Where were they? My phone buzzed silently in my pocket, but I didn't dare check. It felt like an anchor to the ground, a tether to my past that I was desperate to sever. After what felt like an eternity, I took a step back, glancing at the paths that weaved through the park. Nobody seemed to be approaching, and a gnawing sense of betrayal began to creep into my thoughts. What was it about this moment, the anticipation, that had led me to believe I would encounter someone? A spark of understanding, perhaps, now lay deflated, dulled by an unexpected emptiness, just as I contemplated leaving. A soft cough broke the silence behind me. I spun around to see an unfamiliar figure stepping out from behind a nearby tree. The sun's rays made it difficult to see clearly, but as he drew closer, I recognized the haunted look in his eyes. The memory surged back, a familiar face from a distant past. Lucas. My heart jerked, unsure whether to leap towards him or take a step back in defense. "Hey," he said, his voice weathered yet gentle, the lilt of his words resembling the cadence of a long-forgotten song. "Why are you here?" I asked, the sharpness in my tone surprising even me. "I wanted to talk," he stammered, hands nervously digging into his pockets. "I know it's unexpected, but I'm sorry for everything." His apology hung in the air, weighty and unresolved, much like the tension that had built between us over years. Memories washed over Meho's, moments filled with laughter and promise that had slowly morphed into ghostly reminders of what we had lost. I felt a bubbling mixture of anger and longing, fighting for dominance within me. "Sorry doesn't erase the past," I replied, my voice wavering dangerously. "You can't just stroll back into my life and expect me to forgive and forget." "I am not asking for forgiveness," he said, stepping closer with an urgency that startled me. "I just want you to understand I've changed. I've had to face my demons since you left, and it took losing you for me to realize what truly mattered." "What matters?" I challenged, instinctively crossing my arms. "Is it your image? Your pride?" Because I certainly wasn't a part of that equation then. The sadness in his eyes deepened, reflecting my pain as his words floundered in the air. "It matters that I finally see what I lost. I miss you. I've missed you every day." I turned my gaze away, unwilling to let myself dwell on the implications of his confession. The hurt felt too raw, too jagged around the edges for grappling. I had fought so long to build walls, and here he was, trying with trembling hands to tear them down. "You don't get to just miss me now. You missed every chance to be part of my life when it mattered," I whispered fiercely. But somewhere deep within, a flicker of hope began to ignite, a warmth I had buried beneath layers of resentment and lost trust. "Maybe I can't change what's already happened," he conceded, his voice cracking under the weight of the moment. "But I want to try. I want to understand how you've become the person you are now. Can you show me?" I reeled at his request, the audacity of it leaving me breathless. How could I reveal my true self to someone who once turned their back on everything we had? But I found myself staring into his eyes, seeing not just the boy I once knew, but a version of him that had weathered storms, much like I had. A pause hung in the air like a brittle thread, waiting to snap. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, the omnipresent buzz of my phone cut through the heavy silence. I pulled it out instinctively, the screen illuminating with a new message that made my heart plummet. "We saw you at the park with him." You won't get away this time. My world tilted, panic surging anew as I turned back to Lucas, whose expression had shifted from hope to concern. What is it? He asked, clearly sensing the shift in the air. Nothing, I replied hastily, but I could feel the tremor of fear creeping into my voice. The revelation felt like a weight pressing against my chest. I think I need to go, but he started, reaching out to grab my arm, his grip strong but laced with a tenderness that caused conflicting emotions to swirl within me. No. I can't do this right now. My voice broke with desperation as I pulled away from him, a thousand thoughts whirling. His presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like a fire raging within the constraints of a tightly bound space, threatening to consume me. With that, I dashed toward the exit of the park, the laughter and lightness of the day morphing into unsettling shadows. I could feel Lucas's gaze on my back, confusion and hurt etched into his features, but I knew I had to escape, had to find somewhere safe to regain control of my breath. As I reached the sidewalk outside the park, my mind raced, the oppressive weight of the message pressing down on my sanity. Not only was I thrown into an unexpected emotional confrontation, but I had clearly drawn unwanted attention from someone unwilling to see me move forward. And the cliff of uncertainty loomed ahead. Where do I go from here? And most terrifying, who had seen us? What danger might be lurking around the corner? As I stumbled onto the sidewalk, the chaos inside me surged like the tide, a tempest that refused to recede. My phone trembled in my hand, the screen still glowing with the chilling message that had hurled me into a pit of dread. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see ominous figures lurking amongst the trees, waiting to pounce on my moment of weakness. The weight of Luas' presence lingered in the air behind me, reminder of unaddressed feelings woven into an uncomfortable fabric of the past. I turned a corner, my breath ragged with the effort of suppressing a tidal wave of emotion. I needed to figure out my next move, but clarity slipped through my fingers like sand. A flicker of hope emerged as I recalled the safe haven of Mariah's coffee shop, an intimate corner in the bustling town, where whispers of laughter intertwined with the comforting scent of roasted beans. Maybe, just maybe, there I could find solace from the storm that had erupted within me. As I entered the shop, the calming atmosphere welcomed me. A bell chimed above my head, and I stepped inside, shaking off the weight of the outside world. Thick drapes softened the sunlight, bathing the space in warm hues, offering an illusion of calm. I made my way to the back table, where the familiar sight of cracked mugs and well-worn chairs provided an odd sense of belonging amidst the turmoil. Setting my phone on the table, I fumbled with the frayed edge of my jacket. The human buzz around me faded into a muffled backdrop, and I sunk into the embrace of the worn cushion, grappling with the tendrils of panic still winding around my heart. The message felt like chains clasped around my ankles, dragging me down, while the reluctance to deal with Lucas' sudden re-entry into my life loomed over me like a dark cloud, buried in thought. I didn't notice the petite barista approach until she placed a steaming mug before me. Maria offered an empathetic smile, her dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, revealing keen eyes that seemed to see right through the facade I desperately tried to uphold. "Rough day?" she asked gently, her voice soothing. "More like a rough lifestyle," I replied, sarcasm laced with the tremors of vulnerability. Maria leaned against the table, her presence steadying. "Want to talk about it?" "I'm a great listener," the words Evans had said echoed, urging me to consider the power of vulnerability. Maybe sharing even a fraction of the chaos swirling within me could lighten the burden. I took a deep breath, tiptoeing around my emotions. "It's just I thought I could start fresh, away from everything. But it feels like the past is catching up with me and dragging me back," I confessed, feeling the weight of my admission settle between us. "Sometimes, the past has a way of lingering, doesn't it?" she said, sympathy softening her features. "It can be just as daunting as it is familiar. But don't forget the power of choice. You still hold the reins on what happens next." I let her words settle, the flicker of hope she ignited hanging tenuously in the air. I sipped my coffee, warmth flowing through me, infusing me with a sense of reassurance that I had almost forgotten existed. But the ghost of Lucas remained persistent, His sudden vulnerability unwrapped layers of my own that I had fought so hard to conceal. My phone vibrated again, and I jumped, instinctively clutching it. Apologies flooded my mind, causing a maelstrom of anxious anticipation. Was it Lucas? Or was it the shadows of my past surfacing for their moment? Steeling myself, I unlocked the screen. My heart raced as I read the message, and finally, dread turned to disbelief. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I know where you are. You can't hide from the truth forever. Every heartbeat pounded louder in my ears, blaring warnings that clashed with the momentary comfort Mariah's presence had provided. I had imagined my struggles alone, an unseen battle engaging at the stray edges of my life. But this message threw a spotlight on the fact that someone was watching, waiting, planning. Everything okay? Maria asked, concern knitting. Her brows together. A lump formed in my throat, momentarily choking my responses. No, it's not. I need to leave. The urgency in my voice trembled with the weight of impending desperation. Wait, Maria reached to stop me, but I was already stepping away, the room fading behind me as shadows pressed closer, encroaching. Leaning dangerously into my path. As I burst through the exit of the cafe, my mind raced. Who was watching me? What did they know? I had hoped to reclaim my story, to breathe life into dreams I had tucked away amidst the ruins of former self. But fear wrapped around my neck, choking me with uncertainty once again, propelling me into a world where safety was merely an illusion. Suddenly, I collided with a figure, my breath hitching in my throat. Lucas, I whispered, disbelief coursing through me as our eyes met. What are you doing here? I saw you leave the coffee shop. You looked scared, he said, his own eyes echoing the haunted warmth I had reluctantly begun to acknowledge. Beneath the weight of dread, there was an urgency, a need to stay, to understand whatever threats loomed in the shadows. Yet the message haunted me, pulsating at the edges of my mind. You shouldn't have followed me, I said, fear threading through my words. I don't want you involved in this. Too late, he replied softly, stepping closer, the distance between us shrinking as if our fates were inextricably intertwined. I won't let you face this alone. But just as a flicker of warmth began to unfurl within me, the shadows dispersed, revealing not only the ghosts of our past, but the very real specters of danger that could alter everything I thought I'd begun to reclaim. In the letter of the unknown, I discovered a path riddled with dread, and at its edge, I stood awaiting a reality I had never imagined confronting. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched ominously across the sidewalk as Lucas and I stood face to face, the weight of our unspoken past heavy between us. I could see the determination etched in the lines of his face, compelling me to unlock the secrets I had hoarded for so long. Yet, standing in front of him felt perilous, like the edge of a cliff where one misstep could send us both tumbling into darkness. Let's go somewhere safe, he urged, his voice steady, yet laced with concern. We can't stand here. We need to talk. I hesitated, thoughts swirling like autumn leaves in the wind. My instincts screamed to run, to hide, to shield my heart from the danger that lurked in both our pasts and this new threat lurking in the shadows. But Lucas' deep brown eyes held a flicker of hope, that warm ember that kindled my courage in the coffee shop just moments before. Okay. The words slipped from my lips before I had a chance to reconsider. I turned on my heel, leading him down the street as the world around me blurred into a hazy backdrop. It wasn't long before we arrived at a small park, an oasis of greenery amidst the urban chaos where the distant sounds of children's laughter served as a balm against the encroaching darkness. I watched a group of kids fly kites under the fading light, their innocence a sharp contrast to the heaviness lurking in my heart. Perhaps in this serene space, I could loosen the grip of my fears, if only for a moment. Why were you following me, Lucas? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as we settled onto a bench. Doubt threaded through my veins, wrapping tighter around me as I waited for his answer. I wanted to make sure you were okay, he replied, his brow furrowing with earnest intent. You looked lost. I know things aren't easy for you right now, and I didn't want you facing anything alone. He stopped, hesitance draping over him like a heavy cloak. I didn't want to walk away again. Not when you need someone. His words felt like a current coursing between us, igniting memories of shared laughter and broken promises. For a heartbeat, the rest of the world faded, leaving just us two, suspended in a moment of unfiltered vulnerability. I fought the urge to let my walls crumble further. I'm not sure how much help will be, especially with everything going on, I admitted, my heart fluttering uncomfortably in my chest. I received a message today. Someone knows I'm here. I don't know who they are or what they want. Lucas stiffened beside me, a shadow passing over his features. What did it say? Somehow, sharing my fear felt like releasing a weight I had been carrying alone for too long. It said, I know where you are. You can't hide from the truth forever. Silence enveloped us, thick and suffocating, as the implications of my words hung heavy in the air like ominous storm clouds. I wanted to gauge Lucas's reaction, but reading his expression felt impossible. The mixture of concern and fear mirrored my own. We need to report this. We can't take any chances, Lucas said finally, urgency lighting his voice. You deserve to feel safe here. The sincerity in his words stirred something fragile within me, a long-dormant hope that someone might actually want to protect me, to stand against the tempest that threatened to consume me. But just as soon as it flickered to life, it was extinguished by the thought of Lucas, and I becoming entangled further in a web of danger and guilt I had long since buried. Lucas, I said, my voice trembling. What if it gets worse? You could get hurt because of me. His gaze hardened, determination shining through the uncertainty. Nothing is worse than living in fear. You don't have to do this alone anymore, and I'm not leaving your side. We'll face it together. I could feel the heat of his resolve spreading warmth through my chilled bones. A slight tremor whispered through my heart, drawing me closer to him, urging me to trust. Yet, the shadows of my past clawed at the edges of my thoughts, for I hadn't forgotten how easily those I cared for could be dragged into my darkness. As dusk settled overhead, I glanced at the park gates, an itch of anxiety gnawing at the better part of me. We should probably. Before I could finish, a sudden burst of laughter erupted from the group of children nearby, breaking the tension like glass shattering on concrete. In that unexpected moment, a familiar figure emerged from the gathering, a woman with a halo of curly blonde hair, full of life and brightness, a face I hadn't seen in what felt like eons. Is that? I whispered, the breath catching painfully in my throat. Kate? Lucas echoed, squinting against the fading light. My heart raced, a mix of emotions flooding through me as the reality of her presence crashed down. What was she doing here? How did she find me? As she approached with an outstretched arm and a bewildered smile, the entire world felt as if it had closed in around me. Surprise! Kate exclaimed, excitement lighting her eyes. I wanted to come see you. I couldn't stay away any longer, but as she spoke, I couldn't shake the instinctive dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. That seemingly innocent reunion would inevitably stir secrets I wasn't ready to confront, pulling me into the very chaos I had sought to escape. The past had clawed its way back into my life by way of a cheerful face and a bright smile, and I could only wonder how much further the shadows would stretch before the truth was finally revealed. The weight of Kate's presence felt like a storm cloud ready to burst. I blinked back, the confusion and anxiety swirling within me as her bright smile illuminated a space that had felt so comfortably dark for too long. You're here? I managed to say, fighting to mask the trepidation that tightened my throat. Of course. I missed you, she chirped, enveloping me in a hug that was both warm and suffocating. I pathetically clung to her for a moment longer than necessary, drawing comfort from her familiar scent of jasmine and sunshine. But the embrace reminded me of fragile moments like this, moments that could easily shatter. Kate, it's not a good time, I whispered as I pulled away, glancing at Lucas, who stood quietly, a cautious observer. He looked just as apprehensive as I felt, caught between the warmth of old friendships and the encroaching threat in the air. Didn't you hear? I always mark my calendar for surprise visits, she said, her laugh mingling with the nearby sounds of children fading into the heart of the park. I just wanted to show you I'm back in town and ready to catch up. The sincerity in her eyes tugged at me, but my heart sank all the same. Kate didn't know that there were ghosts shadowing me, ones I desperately wanted to keep hidden. But busy, I said, wishing I could sound more convincing. Lucas shifted beside me, catching on to the unspoken tension that hovered thickly in the air. Maybe we can chat sometime later? He offered to Kate, attempting to extend a lifeline. It's just that, how about I join you? Kate interrupted, her enthusiasm undeterred. You know I can help with whatever you're dealing with. My pulse quickened as my chest tightened painfully. I couldn't let her dive headfirst into the storm of my worries. Really, it's okay. I just need some time to. But before my explanation could unfold, Kate's phone began to vibrate and buzz in her pocket. She fished it out, glancing at the screen with scrutiny. Sorry, I need to take this, she murmured, stepping a few feet away. The moment she moved, tension filled the void she left behind, settling solidly between Lucas and me, churning with unspoken fears and unanswered questions. You look haunted, Lucas said softly, his voice almost drowned out by the distant laughter of children. What's really going on? You can't hide from me now, not when she's here. I began, but the words caught in my throat. How many times had I forced myself to keep quiet, to hold back when sharing even the smallest truths felt daunting? What if she gets dragged into this? What if my problems find her too? I can't lose anyone else to my past, Lucas. His expression softened, the concern in his eyes mirroring my own turmoil. You won't lose her. And you don't have to protect everyone from the past. It's okay to let someone in. You won't be alone anymore. As Kate's laughter rang out again, the back and forth between us felt like an unwanted pendulum of hope and despair. Lucas, don't make this harder, I almost pleaded, but before he could respond, Kate returned, her chatter bubbling over with excitement. It was just Amy. She's coming by soon. I can't wait for you two to meet her. My mind raced. Why did the name Amy resonate like an echo from the past? I gave Lucas a panicked glance. His equally terrified expression told me he had the same thought. Noticing the silence falling between us, Kate continued, oblivious to the tension wrapping tightly around our hearts. You know, she used to be in our music class. I can't believe she's back in town. Music class. The simple mention of it conjured images of piano keys and the weight of each note pressing down on my chest. It was a time I had tried so desperately to forget, where dreams had been mixed with unyielding disappointment. Just as the past took root in my mind, Kate's phone buzzed again, this time louder, snapping me back to the urgent present. I'm so sorry. I have to, she answered before I could interject. As she turned her back to us, I felt a shiver crawl down my spine, a gnawing sensation in my gut. There was a gnarly thread connecting all these events, one that was beginning to pull tighter, threatening to entangle us in a web I wasn't prepared to navigate. Lucas, what if I started? But he placed a reassuring hand over mine, grounding me in the moment, a lifeline keeping my spiraling thoughts at bay. You're strong, he said, his confidence like an anchor. We'll figure this out together, okay? No secrets. Just you, me, and a little bit of hope. But just as those words settled in, Kate turned fully back to us, her expression now pinched with concern. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice lowered, the brightness fading as her eyes started suspiciously. And it's about the message you received. I think I know who sent it. My heart plummeted. The shadows creeping around me were no longer merely echoes of the past. They were real, tangible, and seeping back into my present, asking for the truth I wasn't ready to face. Kate, wait, I breathed, my pulse racing with anticipation and dread, but I was too late. In the face of revelations, the line between friendship and fear was destined to blur, propelling us all into the very chaos I had feared the most. That was the day everything came rushing back, the past crashing down like a wave threatening to drown me. I stood in that small park, the remnants of old joy mingling with the stark reality that surrounded us, and I felt utterly exposed. Fear clawed at my insides, but there was something stronger, a flicker of resolve ignited by the presence of Lucas and the truth I had buried for far too long. Who sent the message? I asked Kate, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat a reminder of what had been taken from me and the constant vigilance required to protect what little I still had. She took a deep breath, her gaze steadying, and in that moment, the air felt thick with expectation, as if the world itself held its breath. "I think it was Paul," she said finally, the name hanging heavy like a weighted anchor. Paul? The name echoed in my mind, dragging along heavy memories I thought were well stowed away. Paul was my past before piano lessons and music, the shadowed figure that intertwined with my childhood dreams before he turned into something darker. "Why no?" I whispered, the cold realization crashing over me like ice water. It had been years since Paul had tried to reach out, and I thought I'd left him behind under the weight of 100 melodies filled with memories, mistakes, and hope. I thought he was done. I thought he was gone. Lucas' grip on my hand tightened, a tether in a raging storm. "We'll deal with this together," he said, and I could see the determination etched in his features. "But you need to be open with us, all of us. Don't run back into the shadows." That was when Kate, normally so vivacious and filled with light, transformed before me. "I never told you everything. Not about him, not about what happened between us." Her voice dipped to a whisper, reverberating with intensity born of regrets and unhealed wounds. "He was affecting more than just you back then. We were all affected." "What do you mean?" Confusion tightened around my heart as shadows flitted through the park, memories lurking just beyond the edge of light. Staring at the ground, Kate pressed on. "He wasn't just a friend. There was manipulation. Lies. By the time it ended, it wasn't just you who was shaken. Everyone who cared about you felt the tremors of what happened next." I never knew how to help you. I was alone," I whispered, the reality of her confession sinking in. "And when I finally started to find my way back, you were gone." I could feel my voice tremble, hardening with suppressed tears threatening to spill free. "But it's different now," Lucas said, turning to Kate, a spark of bravery flickering in his eyes. "You're here now, and we can face this together." At this moment, the weight of the world felt oddly balanced. The past may have been a shrouded battlefield, but standing with Lucas and Kate transformed something within me. The pent-up fear that normally clawed at my heart was now intertwined with a fierce burning hope. Maybe it was possible to reclaim not just my music, but my life. Paul tried to reach out several times after Kate confessed. Her voice cracked. I ignored him, thought he would finally get the message. But maybe I should have taken you seriously when I recognized the patterns. His fixation grew deeper, like weeds too stubborn to be uprooted. I pictured the faces of those I loved, entangled in the shades of darker memories shaped by Paul's influence. "We can't let him control us anymore," I asserted, newfound determination coursing through my veins. "It'll help," Lucas said, his resolve merging with mine. "If confronting our past means protecting our futures, then I'm all in." Katie nodded slowly, her gaze flickering with an unyielding sense of understanding. "I want to help. I don't want you to go through this again alone." For a moment, I felt a swell of gratitude connecting through shared struggles. We had stitched ourselves together in the face of unrelenting truth. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about acceptance, loving the scars instead of hiding them. "Okay," I breathed, the word heavy yet liberating. "Let's do this." And with that, we stood as a united front, ready to face the shadows of our past that threatened to twist our future. In the crisp air of that park, laughter and sunlight danced around us, while my heart felt light for the first time in years. The promise of forgiveness wasn't about simply letting go. It was about finding the strength to embrace growth, to forge ahead without fear of judgment, guilt, or shame. As we began to walk away, hand in hand, I turned to them and smiled. Though I knew the road ahead would be arduous, I also knew that together we could reclaim the melody of our lives. "Music calls out for connection," I said softly, my heart humming with acceptance. "Let's compose our own symphony from this chaos, one where we sing a harmony only we can create." And in that moment, surrounded by sunlight and laughter, everything felt possible. My past was no longer a dark cloud casting shadows over my present. It had become a part of the rhythm of who I was, a melody woven throughout my journey where notes of pain intertwined with the promise of hope. As we walked toward the future, I grasped the hands of my friends, closing my eyes for a moment, allowing their warmth to fill me. Beneath the chaos, I could hear the notes beginning to shift, a new melody beckoning me forward. Maybe this time, The tides of fate would finally carry us toward the light, and perhaps, just perhaps, I could finally sing those haunting refrains without fear. Perhaps there was freedom in letting go, in choosing to move beyond the boundaries of our self-imposed prisons, daring to live, love, and create amidst the fragments of our stories. The music swelled within, and as the final notes resonated, I felt vibrant and alive in the midst of the chaos. The world opened up before me, and in that moment, I knew I was ready to embrace it all.